Welcome to the Give Back Lab. I'm your host, Daniella DeGrandi. You've entered a space where bold voices, real stories, and unfiltered conversations come to life. Here in the lab, we're breaking bias, shifting thinking, and exploring the power of giving back through truth, vulnerability, and diverse perspectives. We celebrate diversity of thought and everything beautiful that makes us human. This isn't just talk, it's real, it's raw, and it's exactly the kind of space we need. We're unlearning, relearning, and evolving together. Let's dive in. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Give Back Lab. We are joined here today with Ria Story. At the Give Back Lab, we have conversations that are authentic. It's a safe platform for people to come and share their story in hopes of inspiring diversity of thought and inspiring our listeners to think differently, think bolder, maybe not feel so alone. So this is a safe platform for us to be able to have authentic conversations. And I am delighted today to be joined by Ria Story, who is a 21 book author. Amazing, amazing. And you know what? I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to let you tell us about who you are, what your journey's been, and what is it that you're looking to get out of being on the Give Back Lab? What's your give back? What do you hope to inspire in others?
Hey Daniela, thanks so much for having me. It's always just a privilege. Boy, that was a long list of questions. So let me just start at the beginning. Um, the one that most recent comes to mind is the question you finished on is what I hope to give or give back, I think is how you phrased it. You know, I tell people, first of all, I tell people I married my husband for his name. It's not true, but if you're going to be a speaker and author, you need a last name like Story. I mean, how cool, right? I didn't have any idea I would be doing this when we did get married many years ago. But the thing that is cool is that Mac and I are both leadership speakers and authors and trainers. And as part of that, I share my story because that's the number one gift that I could give anyone, including your listeners on the Give Back Lab, is sharing my story because I believe, number one, we all go through difficult chapters in the stories of our lives. But I'm a firm believer that what happens to us is not as important as who we become and what we do. I like to say that you don't get to choose the cards that you're dealt in life, but you get to decide how you play them. And I think that's what's most important. And if I could give anybody, and that's the one reason I share my story, is to inspire people, not to feel sorry for me, but if to inspire someone that if I can overcome what I went through, everyone else can overcome difficult things in their lives too.
That's exactly what this platform is all about. So thank you so much for joining us. It's truly an honor to be speaking with you. I would love, what is your story, right? Tell us about who you are, and the journey that you've taken to get
Yeah,
here. And
yeah,
I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, just to go back to the last name thing. So
yep.
even though you may not have known it then, maybe it was a clue as to what was to come. So yeah, please tell us, who are you and how'd you get here?
Yeah. Well, today I always like to say that my husband and I have his, mine, and ours when it comes to what we do. We both teach leadership and personal growth principles. And we mostly speak together because the principles are the same. Now, what changes are the stories that we share, and of course, that's different. So his lane is blue collar leadership, and that's very much his niche. And he was, started out as a blue collar factory worker, and so he teaches leadership from that perspective of someone who's been on the front lines and done the work, and then learned all of these leadership and personal growth principles that most frontline manufacturing workers don't ever get introduced to. And so he's had an amazing transformation in his own right by applying those principles in incredible ways. And so his lane really is that blue collar leadership. Now, mine tends to be a more leadership and personal growth for women, teaching leadership in the perspective of as leaders, we all need to remember it's important to develop the team that we want to lead and become the leader that they want to follow. So it's two part there. And I can dig into more on that all day, but that's just kind of an overview of what we do. But again, his lane, my lane, but we mostly speak together, whether it's a blue collar training at an organization or whether it's a big conference room in a stage with 2,000 people. The principles are the same. And we got married because we actually like each other. So we do spend a lot of time together, but we do what we do. And that's what makes us different, right? And from a training or speaking perspective, it's more dynamic, it's interesting because we have different perspectives, different personalities. So we didn't start out in this industry though. Neither one of us did. I touched on Mac's journey just a little bit, and my journey's been a lot different. I left home at 19. I left behind a father who sexually abused me for years and a mother who blames me for it. And I didn't have anything when I left home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a high school diploma. I'd never been to school. I
Wow.
grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We were very isolated. We didn't go to school. We didn't go to church. A lot of manipulation and control went into
Mm,
that situation by my father, who, again, started grooming me at a very young age. The age of 12, he started grooming me and sexually abusing me, and that
wow.
progressed as he got older and as I got older and as he got bolder. It progressed over the years to the point of by the time I was 17, he was regularly having sex with me and bargaining with me
Wow.
for sexual favors in exchange for something like a night out with my friends. And there were times when life was almost not worth living. And I thought
Wow.
about it. A tub of warm water and a razor blade. He was ultimately trafficking me with men he would meet off of the internet.
Oh my
And
God.
back then, I wouldn't have called it that. I wouldn't even known the term. Um, but what I knew was I was in a very dark place and just desperate to get away. And I ran away. I was trying to sneak out of the house, and I ran away several times. And my father would always find me and bring me back. And there again, I didn't have a lot of awareness of just how wrong the situation was. I just, because that was my normal, as strange as it is. But when you grow up in that situation, I knew it wasn't right. I knew I didn't want to be there. But it wasn't until after leaving the situation I was able to look back and see just how much trauma that caused and created. So I left home at 19, and the only job that I could find was working as a waitress at Pizza Hut. And I speak for a lot of high schoolers today and youth groups, and I always like to ask those kids, I'm like, how much money do you think I was making back before they were born, of course, at this point. And they're like $10 an hour, maybe $12 an hour. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
$2.13 an hour plus some tips, but $2.13 an hour to pick up half-eaten pizza crusts off the floor and bust dirty tables. Now, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
We all start somewhere, and that's where I started. But it didn't take me long to realize two things. Number one, that's not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And number two, the job of my dreams isn't going to come find me at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
So much of the time, we want life to be different, but we have to be willing to be the person who can accomplish what we want. We have to be the person who's willing to go do the things we need to do to get what we want, right? And I couldn't have said all that in so many words back then. Um, I couldn't have articulated it like that. I couldn't have even told somebody. But I did realize that I could spend the rest of my life blaming a lack of success on what happened to me. I could be
Right.
the victim, or I could say, you know what, I can't control everything that happens in life, but what I can control is how I respond. And I didn't necessarily choose the healthiest way, I think. And again, I was 19, but the best thing I could do to cope at the time was to just take that past that I'd been through, all of the abuse and the trauma, and just shove it up in the mental closet and lock the key and,
Mm,
lock the door with the key and throw away the key. And that's kind of what I did. Um, I just went on. I just was like, I'm just going to pretend it never happened.
yeah.
I didn't talk about it. I didn't, beyond my now husband. I met him when I was 19. I call him my knight in a shiny Camaro because he had a silver Camaro.
Oh, the
And
silver bullet.
yes. But number one, he was the first person to ask what was going on in my situation. He could see some signs, and a lot of people had seen signs over the years, but no one wanted to get involved.
Mm,
No one wanted to ask.
so
So
sad.
he was the
It's-
first person to just say, "Hey, I'm seeing some things. This isn't normal. What's going on?" Right? And he gave me the courage to leave. So all that to say, many years later, we've long since gotten rid of the car, but I married him. But I didn't want to talk about what happened to me, and I didn't. Beyond a few family members, close friends, I didn't talk about it publicly. I didn't want people to see me as a victim. I
Right.
didn't want people to know what I'd been through. I didn't want to be vulnerable. And I was afraid that if people knew what I'd been through, they would see me differently, right?
Mm,
I think a lot of us carry shame about things we've been through, experienced, or perhaps even done in our lives. And I just like to say, until I owned my story, it owned me.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Did you, and I'm so sorry that that happened to you, and
well,
I have so much respect for you for coming forward and, owning the fact that it happened to you and being very vulnerable and willing to share with others, because I am sure that through your journey, you have shared this story with people who may have been in that, or may have
mhm,
been, or are in that situation. Um, and you maybe unknowingly have given them courage to speak up, right? And so often we hear these stories, and I mean, I worked in news for a long time, so
mm,
we would do pieces on sex trafficking and things, and and there was, I live on Long Island, and there was a piece on Long Island about local sex trafficking, and it is really so embedded into neighborhoods and regions and
mhm,
places, and
yes.
it's out in the open, but we don't see it, right? So I'm very thankful that you're sharing this information and bringing it to light, so that way we can help others who may be in this situation. What gave you the courage? I mean, you grow up in this space,
Mm,
right? And you start to think, like you said, like it's normal, it's my normal, it's what I know. At some point you had to know this isn't right, and then
mm,
you had to take steps, and you say that your mom didn't support you, and I know that there's a lot of young women and young men
mhm,
in this same position, right? Because it is not, it's not a gender thing. It's a horrible abuse, but it doesn't pick a gender. So
mm,
it's not only something that happens to women, and I want to say that very clearly, because I know that there are young men that are also suffering through this. And
mhm,
they're oftentimes, in our quest, and I know you do a lot of speaking with women and leadership for women, as I do as well. But as a mom of two young men, I also want to make sure that we don't forget them, right? I find, society is really hard on the boys, man
mm,
up, don't cry, don't own it, suck it up. And I think that they have as much need for love and attention and listening as girls do. But at what point did you realize, I guess, like really realize, I'm sure you knew early on this wasn't right, but really start to own that it wasn't right, and that made you leave and shift? Because I think that's super important, right? You chose your life, and thank you for that. Thank you for not taking a razor blade and warm water, right? It's, I can't even imagine. I'm sure it was such a tough time.
mm,
What what was it? I mean, somebody listening to this that may be going through it, or have gone, or maybe they did go through it, and they're in that space where you were, lock it up mentally. I'm going to recreate myself, and
mm.
I'm going to be this new person. What kind of advice can you give to them?
Sure. So I'll speak to that in kind of two parts. I think realizing it wasn't right. It happened, stages is maybe not the right word, but over time. And the number one red flag I always say is that if you have to hide something in secret, that's a red flag that something's not right. In any relationship, right? In any relationship, if we have to hide it and cover it up and not tell people, then that's a red flag that something, again, is just not right. So that's the first thing that I think, just that awareness of, if this is okay, why is it a secret?
Right,
Don't tell
right,
anyone. Don't tell anyone because they won't understand. Well, why not?
right.
Um, so, but again, after I left, it was years before I started sharing publicly. And the way that shift came about is realizing, well, I'll just give you the whole story. Mike and I went down for a speaker training contest, and or well, we went down for a leadership conference, and part of that was going to be some speaker training. And at this leadership conference, we heard Les Brown speak, and he was talking about the upcoming speaker training that would be a couple months later. So Les Brown was speaking to this whole room full of people at this leadership conference, and he says to this whole room full of people, he says, "You have a story to share, and someone needs to hear your story. You can help that person." And I thought, I have a story to share, but I don't want to share it. I worked really hard to leave that behind, and you can't make me share it. I don't want to. And so we had already signed up for the upcoming speaker training with Les Brown. And so a few months later, we go down for the speaker training. And, I had been thinking about sharing my story, and I thought, I don't know if I can. It had that much shame over me, right? That
Mm,
much power,
mm,
that much fear. Um, and by that time I'd gone on to get my GED and go to community college, and I'd gotten three college degrees to get the degrees
mm.
I needed to get the career I wanted and the
It's
job I wanted.
amazing.
Life was
Amazing.
life was good at that point. I would have just said I'm
And how old are you at
successful.
this point?
I'm 32. 32.
Okay. Okay.
So
Beautiful.
time had passed, but just, again, life was a success, but maybe not complete healing had gone on, right?
Yeah.
And so the day of this speaker training came, and part of it was a contest. Everybody was going to be asked to create 60-second speech because Les Brown says the best speakers make the fewest words go the farthest. And so I'd kind of been thinking about this, thinking about this, thinking about this. I didn't tell anybody that, I didn't even tell my husband I was thinking about this because I wasn't sure I could do it.
Right.
And the morning of the contest came, and I went in the ladies' room and had like a meltdown, ugly mascara running, crying. I'm
Oh,
like, I can't do this. And if you're a person of faith, for me, that's the moment when I felt just that spiritual reassurance from God saying, you can do it and you don't have to do it alone.
right.
So I went back in the conference room and got on stage and shared my, ended up being about 47 seconds story. And when I sat down, it didn't matter if I'd won the contest because it was the victory inside that says, I'm not going to let happen to me define the rest
I
of my
love it.
life.
I love it.
And I did win, as it turns out. I was one of the
Oh,
five
yay.
winners and chosen and just invited to speak on stage with Les Brown a few months later in Los Angeles. And 10 days after sharing publicly for the first time, I went in my boss's office and I turned in a resignation from the job I'd gone to college 10 years to get.
Your dream job, or so you
But
thought.
yeah, but I discovered the difference between a career and a calling,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
couldn't chase both.
Yeah. I love that. And you couldn't have this calling without the horrors that happened to you in
It's
your
true.
past, right? And so that's another thing of mine. I'm a big believer that in every negative situation, there is a positive. And I am
Yes.
also a person of faith. And I believe that, you know, we're all put on this earth for a reason and we have a calling.
Mm.
And sometimes it takes us a little while to find that. Um, and I'm so happy that you did. I mean, you ha- I'm just really just so impressed by everything that you have achieved.
Oh,
Um,
that's not me.
regardless, well, regardless of your background, right? Just the fact that at 19 you're on your own, by 32, 33 you have three college degrees, you are putting yourself out there, you are embracing, right?
Mm.
And I love that. What was it that drove you, right? Because that it does require drive. Was
Mm.
it what I have a feeling I know what it was, but and I don't want to say it because I don't want to bring my bias in. I'm being very careful not to bring bias into the conversations here at the Give Back Lab. So what was it? What was it that drove you to do that? Because that's a lot of hard work, right? I'm sure you're working and managing a house and you're married at that point and you're going to school. How do you do it all? How
Mm.
do you do it all? And what was your driving factor?
Well, you can't do it all, and I tried. I tried mightily. I tried hard. In fact, one year I sat down, literally, not proud of this, but I sat down and I was like, you know what? If I only sleep 6 hours a night, 4 nights a week, that'll give me a whole extra 8 hours because
Oh my
at some
God.
point I was working full time, working part time, going to college, and yep,
Wow.
we had, trying to cook and clean and do all the things with the PTA and and just
Yeah.
and I maybe it got done, but that year I got the flu like twice. I got tendonitis. I had
Oh,
sinus infection. Like I was never sicker, right,
right.
physically. So lesson learned is that you might can do it all for a little while, but you can't do it all long term. Um, and that was some good lessons learned, and just not time management, but priorities, right?
Right.
And we could talk all day on that. But what drove me to do all of that? Number one, I'm an achiever. I'm a doer. Um, I think some of that is natural wiring. Some people just tend to be a little more of an achiever naturally. But I think I felt early on that I had something to prove,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And that was like if I could accomplish the things, if I could do enough of the things, that someone somehow compensates for the lack of self-worth that I had inherent in me. And so for a while I tried to do it, tried to do all of the things in order to fill that. And you can't, right? At the end of the day, I had to do the work to grow and to heal and to realize that self-worth doesn't come from your to-do list.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I, so how did you get from Pizza Hut to the Les Brown? Like, at what
Yeah.
point did you decide I want to be a speaker and I want to do leadership training? Or
Mm,
what was that like, right?
yeah.
I realized and I was a waitress as well, $2.10 an hour. Um, yes, I recently told my children that conversation because my son was working at a restaurant making minimum wage, and I said,
Mm.
"Oh my God." And minimum wage in New York is 16.50 or something like that, which is fantastic. But
Wow.
I mean, for me, I was like, when I started in the restaurant business, it was 2.10 an hour.
Yeah.
And
It's
I worked at the
amazing.
Sizzler. I worked at the Sizzler. So I understand exactly. So I mean, where in your journey do you decide what is your career evolution, right? So you go from
Sure.
Pizza Hut to where you are today, and you went to college and you got all these degrees. What did you think was your dream job, and what kind of things made you pivot off of that?
Mm. Well, from Pizza Hut, again, going to get my GED, going to community college at night, got a job, got another job, and sort of landed on the administrative side of healthcare. Um,
Okay.
that's just really where I mean, I'm, I was good at that sort of thing, really gearing towards the compliance side, the
Hmm.
making sure everybody else was following Medicare compliance regulations, billing, coding regulations, all of those things. And the interesting thing is, um, again, this is a progression of years, but I learned more about leadership and influence in my role as a director of compliance because I had responsibility for making sure the 3,000 people in the organization followed all of the regulations and policies, but I didn't
Right.
have the authority, right? I couldn't make somebody else follow the laws or the regulations. And it was a bit of a trial by fire, and certainly I made many mistakes over the years. But I learned more about authentically influencing people because I couldn't fall back on do it because I said so.
Right, right,
A
right.
lot of times people think leadership is about a position of authority or, having a title or rank, and it's not. True leadership
Yeah.
is influence. And when I can influence people based on relationships, and I talk about this a lot in my book, The Ladder of Influence. First step on the ladder of influence is I got to be able to control me because
Mm-hmm.
nobody trusts me if I can't control myself. The second step is going to be influence based on character, who I am as a person, right? We call them soft skills, like it's something soft and easy about it, but its character is, can I show up to work on time?
Right.
Can I get out of bed in the morning and go to work, right? That's character. Integrity, ability to work with people. Those are character based attributes, and we have to make sure that we're developing those. And then competency is there, right? We've got to have competency. That's the next step on the ladder of influence.
Mhm.
But character comes first because who we are as a person multiplies and leverages what we know how to do in the workplace, in our career path. And I learned a lot more about trial of, again, trial by fire of I had a title, I had a degree, but I didn't have actual influence. And I had to learn how
Right.
to influence people without authority. And really the main thing that diverted me from that into this leadership speaking space and talking about my story was the Les Brown speaker training. And at that time I had a great job in a great organization. I thought I was going to retire from that job. That was the plan. I'd worked hard to get there and was, just I felt incredibly fortunate to have been given opportunities. And, when we signed up for the leadership conference and ultimately the speaker training, Mac was working in consulting and he had gotten on fire for leadership development at the same time. And he was like, just come down to this conference. It will help you in what you do at work, even if you never do anything with it. And I'm like, okay, so, and then, Les Brown just kind of, that whole thing, just, I could not have expected that.
Right.
And that's what diverted me. Now, I kind of thought that you just put on your LinkedIn profile speaker and people will hire you to speak, and it does not work like that. There
No,
was
no.
there were ramen noodle years. There were ramen noodle years. We sold our house. We sold the house with the pool and the hot tub. We sold the Hummer and the Corvette and the Raptor, and we went to a little tiny apartment with a herd of large elephants living above us, and but we were never happier because
Yeah,
we'd been successful, right? But then the next steps on the ladder of influence are once I become successful in my own right, then I want to turn around and help somebody else learn to climb,
right.
right? That's being significant in the life
Yeah,
of someone else.
yeah.
And we were willing to give up the things. Mac used to say, I'm so passionate about this, I will go live under a bridge in order to do it. I'm like, I'm not living under the bridge. That's a hard line in the sand. We did not have to go to the bridge, but we came kind of close. Um, but I wouldn't trade it. It took several years for us to, I mean, we lost $30,000 the first year we were in business. We didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Yeah, yeah,
But you jump, right? I like to say you can't walk on water till you get out of the boat. And
yeah,
we figured things out. And today we travel all over the country and speak and teach on leadership and personal growth. And we get excited about these principles, not because we read them in a book, right? But because we can
yeah.
say, hey, we've applied these to our life and they work.
Right. You're actually living them. I love that. I love that. I love that you guys work so closely together
Yeah.
and that you feed off of each other and that you realize um, what he does well and what you do well and what you do well together, right?
Yes.
I think that's super important. It's not a competition, it's a joint effort. So
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. So what if you could do it all over again,
Mm.
right? Hindsight's always 2020. What are some of the big lessons that you've learned that you would want to share with anybody that's listening and thinking about doing a big career shift or um, getting into the speaker world or whatever the case may be?
Um, that's that. we could do a whole nother podcast on that. That's a great question.
I would love to. I would love to. We
I
could bring
think
Mac on it next time.
you absolutely could.
I would love
Um,
to do one with both of you.
I think that the number one piece of advice, and I share this with people all of the time, is when you're starting, if you're, particularly if you're wanting to get into the speaker business or leadership business or writing books, I think number one, you have to be intentional about developing yourself, right? Because
Mm,
if you become more valuable, if you're able to add more value to other people, the rest will take care of itself. I don't believe in sales funnels. I don't believe in click funnels. I don't do cold calling. I, Number one, that if I have to manipulate somebody into character-based principles, that just doesn't resonate. But number two, I think there again, if and Zig Ziglar had it, right? You help other people get what they want. They'll
mm,
help you get what you want. And it's not about the manipulation. It's just about, again, adding value to the people in your niche. And I think the greatest thing that a lot of people I see in this space, they want to do what Mac and I do. But that's not the question you have to ask. Are you willing to do what we had to do to get
right.
here, right?
Right.
When
Right.
we started writing books 10 years ago, nobody was buying them. And so, rather than sit home and go, well, nobody's buying books, let's just quit. The biggest thing that I see is that people aren't committed to
Right.
doing the work and being committed to until it happens, right? It's only failure if you quit. And that's the
Right.
number one thing I see is people are like, "Oh, I tried it for 6 months and it didn't work." It took years. It takes
Right.
years. And so that's the number one piece of advice is be 100% committed
Right.
to the outcome and just keep going, right? One step at a time. You don't have to go out the whole way today, right? One step at a time. And the second thing I think that I would do, or I think the second question was, what would I do differently?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know that I would be more intentional about developing my own growth earlier on. I think, or, I didn't, it's just a lack of awareness that I had early on of it's not about checking the box, doing the thing, building the email list or creating the website. It's becoming the person who can do what it is you want to do. And
Right.
that's a you and you thing, right? Are you doing the work intentionally focusing on your growth and raising your level of awareness? So there again, ultimate goal is to be able to turn around and to give that to somebody else. So I'm much more intentional about that these days.
Now that's awesome. And I love, it's only failure if you quit, because
Mm,
that's so very true in everything that we do in life. I mean, I see that in business every day, right? And
yeah.
it's not about quitting. I think that, a lot of life is you have a vision and you have a goal, and sometimes you have to pivot along the way.
Mm,
And maybe that vision and goal shifts a little bit because of outside influences, business changes, tech changes, family changes, life changes, whatever. Um, but it doesn't mean that the ultimate goal has to
mm.
die, right? Has to stop. Um, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. That's my thing.
It's
I
good
love
advice.
Dory. I love Dory. Just keep swimming. Um, so what kind of conversations have you had with leaders in your speaking career that have kind of stuck with you, right? What kind of stories can you share that were either aha moments or something where someone was stuck, or a, kind of pickly kind of situation? Um, what I'm trying to bring some real world examples
Hmm.
of things that people may be in a situation with right now, where they
Mm,
may be wanting to just quit, right? Just
mm,
forget it, just quit, just give up. And I'm sure that through your speaking career and through your training sessions where you hear other people's stories, right? What are some stories of influence that you've engaged with that have stuck with you,
Mm.
and inspired you?
I think the number one thing that stands out, and not naming names certainly, but
No, no, absolutely not.
the biggest aha moments I see are from leaders who are frustrated with a lack of engagement from their team.
Mm,
Um, leaders, there's a difference between leadership and management, and there's a lot of confusion in the leadership world about the two. We manage things and processes.
mm-hmm.
And most of the time, leaders are given a position of authority. They're put in a leadership position because they were good at doing the work. There's
Right,
nothing wrong with that. Management is a very valuable skill. You've got to do the things and get the work done. We manage things and processes. We should lead and inspire people
right.
because people have feelings and emotions. And
Yeah.
I am so guilty of this. I once had, it's terrible to say, but it's a very true example. I once had a team member, and I needed to rearrange some of the office space and some of the desks and some of the things. And I pretty much just marched down to her office and I said, "Hey, we're moving your desk up tomorrow to a different office." Like we were relocating her entire office and office space and her desk because I had decided that's what needed to happen. And maybe that is what needed to happen, right? But my point is, I didn't treat her any differently than the desk
Right,
ultimately.
right,
And imagine that when she didn't like that, when she had an opinion, and. But my point here is so much of the time people are confused on I'm in a leadership role, but I try to manage the people like they're the object, and that creates resistance. Because if I'm not bought into the leader, I'm not bought into where the leader wants to take me, right?
right,
But people in leadership positions are often good at doing the work. That's why they get promoted. But it's a different skill set to go from me doing the work to inspiring you to do the work.
right.
And leaders don't know what they don't know about leadership, but it's kind of like a math professor who never studied math. And we wonder why leaders aren't successful, but most leaders aren't studying leadership.
Right.
So the biggest aha moments I see are when someone understands, oh, it's a different skill set. Like, I need to quit trying to do all of the things and manage the people like they're no different than the objects of the work that we need to do. I need to work on my influence.
Right.
99% of the time, when the leader develops their leadership ability, their frustrations go away. Because most of the time, people want to do a good job. Most of the
Yeah.
time, they'll respond to the leader's ability to lead them. Now, there are going to be a few exceptions, right? There are some people you just cannot influence, they don't have shared values. But most of the time, people will rise to the level of the leader's ability to lead them. The quality of the followers is determined by the character of the leaders.
Right.
And that's the biggest aha moment I see over and over again is when people go, oh, quit blaming them, quit focusing on them, quit externalizing the conflict and just say, look in the mirror. What do I need to do different to have more influence with that person, whether it's your spouse or your kids or your team members? Quit blaming them, right? It's uh, blame is the most popular excuse. I think Myron Golden said that. Blame is the
Yeah.
most popular excuse. Take ownership and responsibility for what do I need to do different. And I've seen that over and over. That's some of the best aha moments when people get it, just like I did. Whoa, I need to do something differently. And when I do, that person responds. She still follows me today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It is very true. The only thing in life that we can control is ourselves, right?
Yes.
And I agree with you. I see that time and time again, that Peter principle,
Mm,
leader, right? They've moved up in the ranks, and you see that a lot in the blue collar world and manufacturing and things like that. And I mean, you see it in corporate America.
mm.
It's everywhere, right? And I've often had coaching sessions, and I'm like, you can only control yourself and
Yeah.
how you act and how you react. And again, that influence that you have is led by that. Um, and do you find people, I know that there are different leader types, right? When you're talking to different people, do you find
Mhm.
that these people that had the hardest time shifting from manager to leader, do they end up in a certain leadership style?
Not in my experience. I don't,
No.
I think number one, once they get it, if that's, if that was the most difficult thing and they do get it, that aha moment, they tend to be very effective leaders because once
Yeah.
they get it really deep, right? But relative to are they a different type of leader, I think a lot of that is personality, experience, um, who we are as a person and our character. And
Right, right,
that's going to be very individual.
right. I was curious because I wondered if you have somebody, if there's a lot more shift to a servant leader type personality,
Mm,
um, because they've done so much, they had that aha moment.
hmm.
Now they've done so much reflection and the shift is made. Do they end up in that space? But I can see it personality wise, right, how we all evolve into different spaces. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love that. I love the journey that you've been on. You're 21 books in. Are you writing more? Or what kind of projects are you working on these days?
Well, I'm not currently. There's always something, just hanging out in the back. But we've been working really lately. Our biggest project this summer is offering more self-guided leadership tools for
Okay.
those leaders who need a simple but effective solution, but maybe don't have a big leadership budget or don't have a formal leadership development in place, but they are high impact leaders who want to improve their leadership ability or somebody on their team. So we've been working on the do it yourself kind of tools and just making those a little more clear on the websites, so that people can, again, there's so much knowledge out there, but it's getting good resources that will help you grow. We did a video course and it's free. It's out there, the 5typesofleaders.com. It's completely
Mhm.
free. You just sign up, 2 hour video course that will take you through the different types of leaders. You
Right.
can identify your own, like, what type of leader am I? What type of leader is the person that I'm reporting to? And broken up in really micro lessons, 15-minute videos. You can get a certificate of completion at the end, right? And again, this isn't a funnel. You don't have to, I'm not going to, it doesn't even go on an email list. Actually, you just can go register at the 5typesofleaders.com, and that's the number five, like, numeral five. And, again, we try to just put enough resources out there so that anybody can get started and,
Yeah.
get on that leadership journey. And eventually they have the ability to raise their own influence, right? Just teaching the principles that we've learned on our journey and just, you know, don't be afraid to,
Yeah.
because you can't help everybody. Focus on the people
Right.
that you can help.
Right. No, I love that. I love that. And it's so give back, right? It's all about the give back and you're giving back in spaces. I love that. And I will go and check that out when we're done. Um, but thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's always a
Um,
privilege.
I would love to have you back with your husband and do a tag team leadership conversation. Um, so I work with some people in the trade space and in manufacturing as well. And I think that not enough emphasis is put on leadership in those spaces because
Mm,
I think that culturally and just what I found, and please, tell me if I'm wrong. I think that culturally what happens is that's just not the attitude you need to deal with these guys,
hmm.
right? Um,
Hmm.
and I think that a lot of it is excused, instead of requested and demanded and expected. So I would love to have you guys back to have a conversation about that
Yeah.
and really um, help the blue collar workers as well as corporate, right? It's everybody needs to have a little bit of leadership
Mm,
in their life, whether it's work or children or just general life, friends, family. Um, Especially around the holidays. So maybe we'll do something closer to Christmas so we can remind everybody how to manage the Thanksgiving and holiday tables. Um, But thank you so much for your time. It has been such a pleasure. I'm so honored that you joined me, and
Absolutely.
I hope to see you back.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniela. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for joining us today in the Give Back Lab. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you just feel seen, share it forward. That's how change begins. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking truth, and giving back in your own way. The lab is always open.